Hey everyone, and welcome back to Binge Guide, the next show. I'm Andrew.
I'm Victoria.
So Victoria, are you ready for another deep dive with me?
Always, Andrew. Always.
Well, this time I think we've got a really juicy one. This new A24 thriller, Opus. It's got a lot of buzz already. And you know those A24 films, they always deliver something interesting.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They don't shy away from, the darker stuff. I'm intrigued.
Me too. And the premise itself is already a grabber. It's about this young writer named Ayo Edebiri.
Okay.
And she gets this crazy opportunity to spend a weekend with this reclusive pop icon, Alfred Moretti.
Oh, wow. I'm already thinking secluded mansion vibes.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the whole mystery is he vanished from the public eye 30 years ago, and now he's making this comeback.
That's a long time to be out of the spotlight. I bet the music industry has changed a lot since then.
I know, right? And to play this Moretti character, they cast John Malkovich.
Oh, come on. That's perfect casting.
I know, right? He's so good at playing these complex, enigmatic characters. I could already picture him, holding court in this secluded compound. Yes, surrounded by those diehard fans and maybe a few skeptical journalists. It's give me some serious cult leader vibes.
Yeah, I see it. And the trailer leans into that whole psychological thriller aspect, too. There are these quick cuts with unsettling imagery and dialogue. They even use phrases like twisted plan. So they're definitely playing with our expectations and setting us up for a wild ride.
Absolutely. And speaking of expectations, casting Ayo Edebiri as Ariel is a bold choice.
Yeah.
I mean, she just won an Emmy for The Bear, and she's really making a name for herself.
Yeah, she was phenomenal in The Bear. She brought this raw energy and vulnerability to the role. It'll be interesting to see how she tackles something like this.
I think it's smart casting because it kind of flips that typical ingenue and peril trope you see in a lot of these thrillers.
Right, she's not just going to be a damsel in distress. She's proven she can handle complex characters, so I expect Ariel to be more than just a victim.
For sure. And to make things even more interesting, the supporting cast is packed with talent. Juliette Lewis, Murray Bartlett, Amber Mid-Thunder. I mean, come on.
They did not hold back on this one. It's like they handpicked actors known for their intensity and unpredictability. Juliette Lewis always goes for those roles that explore the darker side of human nature, so I can only imagine what she'll bring to this already creepy atmosphere.
Okay, so we've got a captivating premise. A cast that's like a who's who of Hollywood.
Okay.
What else do we need to know before we decide if this is binge-worthy?
Well, we can't talk about Opus without mentioning the studio behind it, A24. I mean, they've practically become synonymous with high-quality, thought-provoking cinema.
Especially in the thriller genre.
Oh, yeah. They're not afraid to push boundaries. I mean, think Hereditary, The Lighthouse, Midsommar.
Right. They've definitely got a signature style.
And they've cultivated this really dedicated fan base who trusts their taste. When you see that A24 logo, you're in for something unique. Something that's going to stay with you.
So that alone elevates Opus to must-watch territory for a lot of film fans. Exactly. And their films, they always spark conversation, right? Inspire analysis, and sometimes they even become cult classics.
Yeah, and speaking of cult classics, often those start with mixed reviews, which brings us to Opus's reception at Sundance.
Oh yeah, the Sundance buzz. Things always get interesting there.
Right, so the reviews were definitely mixed, which for an A24 film isn't always a bad thing.
Yeah, it's like part of their brand almost.
Some critics found the plot a bit convoluted, like it was trying to do too much, and a few even used the word pretentious.
So maybe trying too hard to be artsy.
Yeah, maybe. But even the negative reviews mentioned some strong points.
Like what? Fill me in.
Well, pretty much everyone praised the performances.
Yeah.
Especially Edebiri and Malkovich. They brought real intensity and complexity to their roles.
Well, that's no surprise given their track record.
Right. And Malkovich, he's known for those larger-than-life, morally ambiguous characters. He's not afraid to go to those dark places. And that's kind of what Opus needs, right?
Exactly. And Edebiri, even though she's newer to the scene, she has this amazing range. I mean, she can be funny, heartbreaking, and even terrifying when she needs to be. Remember that scene in The Bear where she just loses it in the kitchen?
Yeah, totally. Chilling. She'll definitely bring that same raw energy to this.
Oh, for sure. And the critics seem to agree that the film's overall atmosphere was really effective. They talked about the sense of unease, the building tension, the way the director uses sound and visuals to create this unsettling hypnotic effect.
Well, that's classic A24. They're masters of mood and atmosphere. They know how to get under your skin. So even if the plot is a bit messy, it sounds like the film still delivers a strong emotional experience.
Right, and for some viewers, that's enough. They don't need everything spelled out for them. They want a film that challenges them, makes them think and feel,
Exactly, and that's where this whole idea of a cult classic comes in. Sometimes a film that's initially divisive finds its audience over time. People start to appreciate those layers of complexity, the unconventional storytelling, and suddenly you've got a movie that people are still talking about years later.
Okay, so walk me through this cult classic idea a little more. What makes a film reach that level?
Well, often they have a unique vision, a style that sets them apart from the mainstream. They might be a bit rough around the edges, maybe even intentionally. And they often deal with themes or ideas that are ahead of their time or that resonate with a specific group of people.
So you're thinking Opus has a chance. Even if it doesn't win over all the critics right away,
Yeah.
it could still become a cult favorite.
I think it has the potential. It's got that A24 stamp of approval, which means something to film buffs, plus the cast, the director's vision, the music. There are a lot of pieces that could contribute to its longevity.
And let's not forget the Ayo Edebiri factor. She's a rising star with a huge following, and her involvement alone could be enough to get people talking about Opus.
Absolutely. She's got that it factor, that charisma that draws people in. And her fans are passionate, they're engaged. They're going to want to see what she does next.
Okay, so we've got the cult classic potential down. But what about the average viewer? Someone just looking for a good thriller for movie night.
Well, that's where it gets tricky. If you're someone who likes straightforward stories and clear endings, Opus might not be for you.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to require some patience, some willingness to embrace the ambiguity.
Right. It's not going to hold your hand and explain everything. It's more like being thrown in the deep end and having to figure it out as you go.
But if you're up for the challenge, if you like dissecting a film and debating it with your friends afterwards, Opus could be really rewarding.
Yeah, and even if you don't love the plot, you're still going to get those amazing performances from a phenomenal cast. Plus, the visuals and the soundtrack are supposed to be incredible.
And speaking of the soundtrack, the film's title, Opus, is a musical term, right?
It is, yeah. It refers to a large-scale, ambitious composition.
So maybe the filmmakers are hinting at something there, like a little clue about the film's overall ambition.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think. And it connects back to what we were saying about A24 pushing boundaries and creating films that are more than just entertainment.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. The premise, the cast, the director, the studio, the music, the mixed reviews, the cult classic potential, and even the title. What else?
Actually, there is one more thing, and it might be the most intriguing aspect of the whole film. Okay, so you mentioned those mixed reviews from Sundance. What were the critics actually saying?
Well, it seems like the plot was a big sticking point. Some reviewers thought it was too convoluted, like the film was juggling too many ideas without fully exploring any of them.
I can see that happening.
Yeah, and a few even called it pretentious, like it was trying too hard to be artsy or mysterious.
That's interesting because A24 has a reputation for making films that are stylish and, substantive. They tackle those complex themes, but they usually do it in a way that's engaging.
Right, and that's why those criticisms stand out. But even the negative reviews admitted the film had its strengths.
Okay, like what? Give me the good stuff.
Well, almost everyone praised the performances, especially Edebiri and Malkovich. They said they brought real intensity and complexity to their roles.
Well, that's not surprising considering their talent.
Right, and Malkovich especially. He's known for playing those larger-than-life, morally ambiguous characters. Those roles that really go to those dark places.
Yeah.
Seems like Opus calls for that.
Yeah, and Edebiri, even though she's relatively new to the scene, she has this incredible range. She can be funny, heartbreaking, and even terrifying when the role needs it.
Totally. Remember that scene in The Bear when she totally loses it in the kitchen?
Oh yeah, chilling. I bet she brings some of that same energy to this role.
Absolutely. And the critics also seem to agree that the film's overall atmosphere was very effective. They talked about the sense of unease, the building tension, the way the director uses sound and visuals to create this really unsettling, almost hypnotic effect.
Well, that's classic A24, right? They're so good at creating mood and atmosphere. Like they know how to get under your skin and stay there. So it sounds like even if the plot is a little confusing, the film still delivers a strong emotional experience.
Right, and some people actually prefer that. They don't want everything explained to them. They want a film that makes them think and feel.
Right, and that's where the idea of a cult classic comes in. Sometimes a film that's initially divisive, misunderstood, finds its audience over time. People start to appreciate those layers of complexity, the unconventional storytelling. And then bam, you've got a film that people are still discussing years later.
Okay, so break down this cult classic idea a bit more. What are the signs a film might reach that kind of status?
Well, often those films have a unique vision, a style that's different from the mainstream. They might be a bit rough around the edges sometimes on purpose. And they usually deal with themes or ideas that are ahead of their time or that resonate with a specific group of people.
Okay, so are you saying Opus could be one of those films? One that maybe doesn't appeal to everyone right away, but eventually finds its niche and becomes a cult favorite?
I think it has the potential. It's got that A24 backing, which carries weight with serious film fans. And then there's the director's unique style, the music. There's a lot there that could give it staying power.
Plus, don't forget about Ayo Edebiri. She's a rising star with a huge following, and just her being in it could be enough to get Opus into the cultural conversation.
Totally. She has that it factor, that charisma that draws people in, and her fans are really passionate. They're going to want to see everything she does.
Okay, so we've talked about the cult classic potential, but what about the average viewer? Someone just looking for a good thriller to watch on a Friday night.
I think that's where it gets a little tricky. If you prefer straightforward stories with clear endings, Opus might not be the best choice.
Yeah, it sounds like this film requires some patience, a willingness to kind of embrace the unknown.
Right, it's not going to hold your hand and explain everything. It's more like being thrown into the deep end and you have to figure it out as you go.
But if you like that kind of challenge, if you enjoy dissecting a film and, debating it with your friends later, then Opus could be really rewarding.
Exactly. And even if you don't love the plot, you're still going to get those amazing performances, a phenomenal cast, plus those incredible visuals and the soundtrack.
And speaking of the soundtrack, the film's title, Opus, is a musical term.
It is, yeah. It refers to a large-scale, ambitious musical composition.
Huh. So maybe the filmmakers are hinting at something there, like a little clue about the film's overall, ambition.
Right. It definitely makes you think. And it ties back to what we were saying about A24 pushing boundaries, creating films that are more than just entertainment.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The premise, the cast, the director, the studio, the music, the mixed reviews, the cult classic potential, even the film's title. Is there anything else we need to consider?
Actually, there is one more element we haven't discussed yet, and it might be the most intriguing part of the entire film. Okay, so remember how we were talking about those mixed reviews and how some people thought the plot was a bit too much? Well, there might be another layer to that.
Oh? Like what?
Well, it's something that's been hinted at in the trailers, and some of the reviews have mentioned it, but it hasn't really been explored in depth yet.
Okay, I'm listening.
What if Opus isn't just a psychological thriller? What if it's also a commentary on fandom, and, that whole blurred line between reality and performance?
Yeah, that's interesting. Now that you mention it, there were a few moments in the trailer that really stood out to me.
Yeah.
Like that shot of Moretti addressing his followers. It had this almost cult-like vibe. And the way Ariel seems to get caught up in his charisma, like she's losing herself in his world.
Exactly. The film seems to be asking some pretty deep questions about celebrity worship and the power dynamics that come with fame. It's a theme that's always relevant, but especially now with social media, it's like it's amplified everything and created this whole new level of parasocial relationships.
It's true. We often project our own desires and fantasies onto celebrities without really knowing the person behind the image. We build them up in our minds, and then we're disappointed when they don't live up to those expectations.
And that disconnect between the public persona and the private individual is something A24 has explored before. In films like The Bling Ring and Ingrid Goes West, they don't shy away from showing the darker side of fame, the obsession, the manipulation, the way it can warp people's perceptions.
And with a character like Moretti, who's been out of the spotlight for 30 years, that distortion is probably even more intense. He's become this mythical figure, and his return is bound to create all sorts of drama.
Think about it. For 30 years, people have been building up this image of Moretti in their heads. He's a blank canvas for their hopes and dreams, and now he's back. But who is he really? Is he the person they've been waiting for, or is he something completely different?
That's a great point. It's like the film is setting up this clash between the myth and the reality. And it's going to be fascinating to see how that unfolds, especially through Ariel's eyes as she tries to figure out this world of fame and fandom.
Right. She's our guide through this whole maze of illusion and deception. And I think her journey is going to be as much about self-discovery as it is about uncovering the truth about Moretti.
This is why I love doing these deep dives, Victoria. We start with a simple question. is this film worth watching? And we end up uncovering all these layers of meaning, these thought-provoking themes, these connections to the real world.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, right?
Yeah.
Each layer reveals something new, something unexpected. And by the time you get to the center, you have this whole new understanding of what you thought you knew.
So for our listeners, what's the takeaway here? Why should they care about this whole exploration of fame and fandom in Opus?
Because it's something we all experience on some level. We all have our own relationships with celebrity culture, whether it's following our favorite bands on social media or, getting starstruck by a famous actor. We're all aware of how much fame influences our society.
Yet Opus seems to be offering a really smart and thought-provoking take on that. It's not just about the glamour, it's about the psychology, the power dynamics, the blurred lines between what's real and what's just a performance.
Exactly. It's asking us to look at our own relationship with fame. How much do we buy into those personas that celebrities create? Where do we draw the line between admiration and obsession? And what happens when those lines get blurred?
Those are important questions, especially now when we're bombarded with images and stories of celebrity all the time. It's easy to get caught up in the hype and forget that these are real people with their own flaws and struggles.
Right. And Opus seems to be reminding us of that. It's a cautionary tale, but it's also a fascinating character study, a psychological thriller, and a commentary on storytelling itself.
So to wrap things up for everyone, we have Opus, a psychological thriller from A24. It's got an amazing cast, a haunting score, and a premise that will keep you guessing.
But it's also so much more than that. This is a film that'll make you think, make you question things, and maybe even feel a little uncomfortable.
And that's what makes it so intriguing. It's not just your average popcorn movie. It's a film that will stay with you long after the credits roll, and it has the potential to become a true cult classic.
So if you're looking for a film that's both entertaining and thought-provoking, Opus is definitely worth checking out. But be warned, this is a deep dive.
And sometimes the deepest dives leave the most unexpected discoveries.
Oh.
Until next time, this has been Binge Guide, the next show. Happy watching, everyone.